Welcome to the Elite Producer Podcast. Here, you'll find unfiltered, unapologetic perspective and training for the final expense life insurance industry. Coming to you from the great state of Texas, your host and president of Equita Final Expense Services, Chase Urick.
Hi there, Chase Urick coming to you again with another episode of the Elite Producer Podcast. It's been a while. We took a little bit of a break, a lot of things going on. But man, this is well worth the wait. We have a very special guest for you guys today. We've been hitting at it. We've been alluding to it. We have none other than the CEO of Senior Market Advisors. I'm extremely excited to have Brandon Clay on with us. Brandon, I appreciate you spending some time with us today, buddy.
No, absolutely, Chase. And for the Elite Producers Network, I'm excited about this opportunity. I know you've got a great audience, and many of them are probably near and dear to my heart as it relates to final expense and some of the things we'll get in here today. So I don't want to go ahead of myself, but I'm excited, as you can tell.
I'm fired up. I don't think our audience, maybe you do, maybe you don't know, but I'm humbled to have Brandon on with us today, just simply because if you don't know, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Brandon real quick. The author of 6 Hours to Six Figures. If you haven't read this book, go get it, check it out. I'm knee deep in it right now. I'm loving it. But also 26 years in the industry, 26. I consider myself to become a grizzled old veteran, long in the tooth with 14 years. Brandon is like the Gandalf the Grey to us. He is the all-knowing. So I'm extremely excited to be able to pick the brain of somebody like him. Started on the carrier side of the business, started as an agent, got into the carrier side of things. The unique thing for me and selfishly that I'm excited about talking to you about today is you've seen it through many different oculars, many different vision, different lenses here of the industry, which is super awesome. You were a part of the massive growth and the innovation in many different areas of the industry. Like, for example, there was a big push back in the day, and it didn't become real famous and real popular until recent for like the special needs and chronic plans. A lot of people are hip to those now, but you were ahead of the curve, knew all about that back in the day. You're one of the, if not the most successful, humble individuals I've ever met in this industry, just from the aspect that if people go and revert back and listen to your talk at 8% Nation, very successful, but if they have the opportunity to talk to you, you treat them with just respect and love, like, you know, you're just a regular old guy, because that's what you are. I love that about you. And then also, I can see why you and Scotty Elliott are such good buddies. Scotty has such a really good gauge of discernment and judge of leadership. And I love that about Scotty. I lean on Scotty for that kind of stuff. And I can see why you guys get along. The more I dive into who Brandon Clay is, there's a lot of similar thought processes in terms of loving people up, caring about other people's success. We're going to talk about that. But so if you're out there right now and you're listening in, I'm just going to tell you right now, buckle up, because we're going to touch on really 3 key areas in some organic conversation today that if you, regardless of what market you're in, you're going to want to have pen and paper handy, or you're going to be able to want to rewind this, check this out later, because you have a wealth of knowledge here that is just unbelievable. And he's going to lay it on you strong here. So with that being said, Brandon, thankful to have you here. Appreciate you again. But I want to talk about something that we talked about offline leading into you being able to share some time with us. You know Medicare about as well as anybody I've ever met or heard of in this industry. And I would put you literally at the top of that list. And in our conversations, we talked about, you know us, we're more final expense specialists, getting into Medicare, doing some integration. I'd love to peek inside your mind a little bit and just get you to share some words with us in terms of how important is it to add in these other markets as we start talking about creating a 6-figure income and a 6-figure residual. What's your thoughts on being able to do that with final expense and Medicare?
Well, so Chasing so many things, as you left me several breadcrumbs along the way of that introduction, which I appreciate. And one of the things that got me engaged in this market years ago, 26 years, even as you said it, is I always tell people Medicare didn't so much change my life, it saved it. Now, that didn't mean I was suicidal and ready to throw in the towel. I was just looking for an avenue to have a higher level of success using the skill sets and the resources that were in front of me. And even now, to your point about my heart for agents, is number one, this is the best time in history to be involved in Medicare. But the way to leverage Medicare for its full opportunity, the renewal stream, the ability to generate a 6-figure renewal, to me, is still to leverage final expense as a core platform. There's reasons and rationales for that. So what I like to say is I've always brought the $1 billion ivory tower, the ideas that come from all the carriers, whether they're FE, MA, hospital indemnity, coalesce those and bring them together in a cross-selling environment using final expense as the core foundation to then slam that $1 billion ivory tower against the $540 kitchen table, showing agents that the work they're doing today can be leveraged in a very complementary, cohesive, linear, progressive, logical fashion. You're not looking after some needle in a haystack, some holy grail, some impossible dream. You're simply taking the hard work you do today, pork chopping and door knocking on a final expense chassis, which gives good revenue year one, but doesn't do so well year two forward. There's a higher fall off rate, a higher attrition rate. Persistency is important. But if you take that platform and you layer in the peanut butter and jelly, the Reese's peanut butter cup of Medicare Advantage, very specifically, D-SNPs, which we'll talk about, and hospital indemnity, your six-figure income that's linear can become a six-figure renewal over the period of 2, 3, 4 years. Actually, I've got some testimonials now, Chase, where we have agents achieving six-figure status within a year, wow, 18 months. So I'm not trying to do pie in the sky. That's not what this is about. It's about a very specific, iterative way to take what you do now and layer it in such a way that it gives you higher revenue, higher service to the population. And you know me with this last little segment of philosophical, as you serve, you deserve. Yes. But if you want to deserve a six-figure renewal, you're going to have to serve at a higher level, which means integrating these products.
With that being said, and I'm 100% with you, which is why I wanted to pick your brain on this before the podcast, a while back. It just seems like the two are married. You said peanut butter and jelly. I literally have that on my notes here in front of me. It is married. It is, they're made for each other. Your opinion, you've done this at a high level for those listening in, prior organization, 3 years of integrating Medicare with final expense, 25,000 plus applications. I'm going to say that again, 25,000. That's ridiculous. That's a goal. I'm going to tell you right now, since our conversation, that's my goal now. 3 years, 25 plus is what we want to be knocking out each year. And I'm thankful for that conversation, because that kind of gave me, I need to lift my goals a little bit. I need to change my vision a little bit. How do you get in terms of the starting point for a new agent? Do you believe that you have to have the firm foundation of doing 15, 20 a month, or can you jump right into Medicare and integrate immediately? What's your ideology on that?
So, and we could even go back to what you just described as a history when I took, and I'm going to do a shameless plug here.
Do it.
The 6 hours to six figures, which, this is the 2018 version. I'm working on 2021, 22, but the core information is the same and it's still consistent and it still works. But I was in a room in 2016 with about 50 final expense producers, probably generating with those 50 people, 30, 40 million of final expense. I mean, an appreciable number, yeah. Great production. I asked them, how many people have health licenses? Only 40% of the room raised their hand. So of course, with Medicare, you have to have a health license in order to be able to generate the sales. I literally said, let's do this iteratively. Get your health license, and then we'll take accidental death and dismemberment policies as the gateway to using your health license. Then, Chase, we iteratively added on Medicare Advantage, and the only product at the time were dual special needs. There were several reasons for that, whether it's the election cycle, SEP, April forward, whether it was that the final expense people they've been selling were low income subsidy and duals by design, but we didn't try to give them 31 flavors of Baskin Robbins. I literally said, let's choose 2 flavors. We'll do FE, we'll do AD&D, and then in about 30, 60, 90 days, when you're comfortable, you've got your health license, let's layer on the first portion of Medicare. And then as every learning experience gave them another avenue of growth and opportunity, yes, we began adding in HMOs, MAPD, PPOs, all the alphabet soup and acronyms of Medicare. And the acclimation period, if you gave me a window, I would tell you within 6 months, you've got an agent that is writing 15 to 20, 25 MAs a month. Yeah. And then as they compound those effects with 1 or 2 AEPs, they're then going to start working their way toward a 6-figure renewal income. So for me, it's iterative, because plate spinning is tough enough in the real world of life and sales that we have today. Don't compound that with intermediate challenge / failure by trying to do too much all at once. That's my take.
Gotcha. I love it. And it's sound advice. Obviously, it's successful advice. You've implemented this many different times and it works. That's so big for me right there. That was like, I nerd out for that question right there, because as we implement, as we look to educate and help people become successful, you want to lead them down the correct path, not what you believe without any factual or experience yourself. That right there, for those listening in, I mean, that's coming from 26 years in the business right there. So I appreciate that. As you talk about some of the alphabets of the Medicare world, and we kind of transition to, there was a conversation, and anybody out there, we'll plug this right now. Cody, who we've had on here many times, Cody Askins, we've had Cody on a couple of times in some of our other podcasts. You spoke at 8%. And for anybody out there, we'll share this with FS Nation within our group chat and within our organization. But if you're not with us right now and you find this podcast, go out in YouTube, Brandon Clay at 8% Nation. You talked about it, the whole 40 minutes was unbelievable. I think it was 32 minutes. It was great. I've actually passed that around to about 6 of my closest friends in leadership last night. And you had touched on one particular topic I want to kind of go over now, which was MAPDs in hospital, the HIPs combo. That was a powerful, for me, as I get more acclimated to Medicare, that one floored me. And I had to go back, rewind that about 4 different times. You mind sharing a little bit? You don't have to rehash all 8%, but you mind recapping that just a little bit? That was powerful.
So, back to iteration. So if we use accidental death and dismemberment, AD&D policies as a way to write more final expense, and then we use dual special needs to write that subset of that clientele. When you then move into what I'll call the MAPD, middle market, middle income, a little higher than duals, and a little higher than what might be the classic final expense consumer, you're now in an audience that are going to have to pay co-pays. $10, $20 specialists, $300 a day times 7 days for the hospital. They might have to have cancer, and then all of a sudden there's a 20% copay up to the moot. There it is, maximum out-of-pocket level of $6,700 on a national basis. In that middle market, those people can ill afford those types of copay structures. So what you've done when you sell them a zero premium Medicare Advantage plan is you've done a great thing. Don't let anyone tell you haven't, but you still left them exposed. So how do you cover the gap? You cover the gap through hospital indemnity. So for a base of $40 a month, you can make sure that if they did have multiple hospitalizations, they would not have to pay that 300 times 7 days. The hospital indemnity would pay it. If you add a cancer rider, and let's say that premium is $70, if they develop cancer, which there's a high prevalence of that right now, that cancer rider would give them a $10,000 lump sum. And here's what I tell agents all the time: hospital indemnity, when presented, sells itself 70% of the time, because people don't realize they could have covered those gaps in that standard zero premium MAPD. And I did a room full of agents that were seasoned Medicare agents, and I walked them through exactly what I did at 8% Nation. And Chase, you should have seen their mouths drop, because they started to feel a little bit like they'd done their clients a disservice by not having shown them a hospital indemnity. And then in the other side of that room were the kind of, I'll do this, but their nose in the air Medicare supplement people that say, oh, you should never sell a zero premium Medicare Advantage. You leave them exposed. When they notice that a hospital indemnity bridges the gap between MA and MedSup, even they thought there'd be a good rationale for selling a Medicare Advantage plan with a hospital indemnity. That's my Reese's cup analogy. It's two great tastes that taste great together. Hospital indemnity and MAPD will always work. So I think it's something agents should be looking at in their portfolio.
And you reference it and you kind of compare it to a what is it, a mini MedSup, right? I love it.
Yeah, I like to call it a baby MedSup or a MedSup Lite, LITE. But imagine though, and I'll do this, a plan G with a pharmacy plan on top of it might be $140 a month. A zero premium Medicare Advantage with an indemnity might be $60 a month. And you essentially have a very similar benefit with a couple of exceptions. Medicare Advantage will have the GEM, the DVH, the dental vision hearing, the OTC, the over-the-counter. It'll have a series of additional benefits that most MedSups just don't have. So you're saving someone $80, $90 a month. And what can you do with $80, $90 a month, Chase? you can sell them final expense.
Yep.
So if you become smart, and I'll maybe get to end in my mind a little bit of how you get to that place of service at the highest level by learning along the way. If you can use hospital indemnity to bridge the gaps, then you're going to be able to support higher enrollment, and you won't be as vulnerable to someone leaving plan A to plan B, because when they have you with indemnity, if they do move from a plan A to a plan B, and that's not MedSup but MA, they're going to call you. And they may not realize that hospital indemnity goes with them no matter which plan they choose. So it's a very powerful way to strengthen the relationship and the coverage that you're offering.
Yeah, and to your point that you had mentioned in the 8% Nation speech, it was really neat because at the end of the day, we all want to make sure that we're taking care of our client to the best of our abilities. And for those that were kind of upset from the MA perspective that they didn't do what was best for their client, now you know, and you're able to make sure that when you go out, you're able to add that to your repertoire and help them. Such a key thing that even being around Medicare, I was like, wow, didn't even register. That's high level thinking right there that most just miss.
Well, and I'll add one more thing to this, and I want to do it because I want, what I always tell people is kind of like in the days of Wall Street, Louis Rukeyser. I'm a little older than most of you, but follow the money. So you've got carriers now that a decade ago would have maybe only have done MedSup, maybe only have done MA. But of the big 6 carriers, they're all doing MedSup and they're all doing MA. But if you now go and look at their portfolios, many of them are doing life. There's been some recent introduction by some pretty high profile carriers for MedSup and MA that are now doing life. But go and look, they're all doing hospital indemnity. It's because they know there's value in the portfolio. And here's both the opportunity, but also the threat. That if we as agents don't mobilize and start doing portfolio selling, the carriers are going to start doing direct to consumer stuff without us, going into our books of business where we brought them the life policy, laid it at their feet, but we didn't cross market MA. We didn't cross market HI, hospital indemnity. They're going to do it because they're building the platforms. So we can become more valuable to the carrier by being solution-minded and cross-selling focused.
It's powerful. At the end of the day, there was something said at the AmeriLife Symposium that we had attended a couple months ago, also that goes directly in line with that. You don't want your clients to outgrow you. You want to be able to be that agent for the family, for the house. And when you do what you need to do in terms of the life, the MA, covering their needs in totality, that's how you're able to have a client not outgrow you. So that's a powerful point. I want to transition to something that floored me as well in that speech. And we train every day, Monday through Friday, with all of the producers with FS Nation. And sometimes I call it neck up training. In the sports world, coaches will talk about, we're not just going to beat you up physically today with practice. We're going to do some neck up stuff. Well, one of the things that you touched on, a lot of our things are cerebral, they're neck up, but you touched on something that floored me, and I'll be redundant: the will and the skill. I'm going to share this with everybody within our organization, and you can go out and look this up on YouTube. That first part, it will punch you right in the face if you are mediocre right now and it's an effort thing. That will and that skill will punch you right in the face and in the gut. Do you mind touching on those real quick for us? Because those were amazing.
So Chase, and I'll have to tell you the genesis of some of those kind of euphemisms and cliches and metaphors that I love to do so much. I'm a storyteller by design. I was in a room as a brand new sales agent with a little kid that had just been born, and it was straight commission. It was security systems. The sales manager walked in and said, 80% of you in this room don't matter. The other 20%, that's who I'm talking to. Now, there was a little bit of Glenn Ross, if you're familiar with the movie. But what bothered me was that the law of Pareto had immediately marginalized me as a brand new rep who didn't know what he was doing. So what I've developed in that is sort of this nurturing mentor approach, but I can't mentor you, coach you, train you, develop you if you don't have the will. And that means you have to want to. Now, so the question for most of us is not can we? The question for most of us is will we? So when I talk about the will, it's the fortitude to get up every day and be kinetic. Don't wait for it to happen, make it happen. It's the not waiting for the leads to get better and to become magically closable. It's to then learn and be developed where you can start rebutting in a way that gives you the ability to overcome the rational objections. You need 3 objections according to spin training. Neil Rackham, behavioral scientist. I'm classically trained in training and skill in sales training with skill-based selling. But until you're really willing and able to pay that price, then any conversation you and I have trying to mobilize and motivate, it's going to fall flat.
Absolutely.
But if you give me attitude, will, I can work with you on aptitude, skill. And skill development, if we know what we are as human beings, will be iterative. It'll be the blade, the ear, the full corn in the ear, a biblical metaphor. But all of us sometimes want to jump to harvest. And when we don't actually see it manifest quickly, the willpower goes out the door. Yep. And I always like to say, when your get up and go has got up and went, the first thing you've got to do between the ears is decide, how am I going to fight? What is my willpower? So I might have been different in my phrasing at the 8% Nation, but I do this. I've trained now in this space, industry specific, 60, 70,000 agents over a 26-year period. I have seen some of the most unlikely people who would have been commoditized as they're going to be wasting my energy, but they had great willpower. They developed the skill. And now many of them during the COVID period called me and said, hey, I made it through one of the roughest periods financially, waiting to see what was going to happen because I had a block of renewals that sustained me, because I listened to what you offered me 3 years ago. And I said, no, that's not my credit. You had the will to follow the process until the skill developed. And most of us in sales, that's where we do fall short.
Yeah. And it's so powerful of a message because I can teach you, I can have the greatest training, I can have the greatest mentor, I can have the greatest program. But if you don't have the will to want to improve and sharpen your sword, it's just not going to happen. And when you were talking about that and touching on that in the video, it just speaks to 14 years of my life of licensed agent, recruiter, mentor, trainer, and then now in my current position as president of the company. There are people right now on our all-time leaderboard who will tell you themselves, like, I don't have the insurance stud producer resume, but those are the best because I'm willing to run through that wall. If you tell me that the opportunity is real, I'll run through that wall. I'm a sponge. Let me soak up all the knowledge. That person right there that's your ideal. If you're Frankensteining a top producer, number one is coachable, teachable, willing to learn. And that's just, that gets me all the time. And when we're talking to new producers and we're having, recruiting conversations and we're interviewing, one of the first things that I'll bring up, and I know our team does, is we like to tell them, hey, look, everything, all of these awesome little bells and whistles we're going to talk about here in a minute, they're going to be amazing. You're going to love them. Fresh leads, great contracts, great companies, great support service, all these things. I just got to ask you, are you coachable? Are you trainable? If I get you with somebody who's done it successfully for a long period of time, are you willing to listen to them and go with those ideologies, those teaching methods? Will you run with that? And that point when it comes to the will that you touched on was so good. And it transitioned beautifully to your topic as you talked about the skill, because you can teach, you don't have to be the most talented, but I can teach you how to say it, how to go ahead and knock on that door, how to make a point. We can teach all that, but I can't teach you to get up and go to work and let your feet hit the floor and be motivated. And there's a lot to it that we'll leave out for today for time constraint purposes, so we don't keep you here all day. But as you transition from will to skill, where do we go from there?
Well, and I think I characterize this in a couple of the other books that I write, which are sort of parables of the sales world and the world we're all in. But I talk about the effort phase, which effort is going to be a component and a byproduct of the willpower that you exhibit. Because what it means is, if we talk about the 4 quadrants, when you're unconsciously incompetent, you don't know that you don't know.
Correct.
But then the moment you hear a podcast like this and you become enlightened around the possibilities, you become consciously incompetent. But here's the deal. You know that you don't know. And the moment you know that you don't know, you can do what? Go start getting the knowledge. And the knowledge, willpower, effort phase is going to be awkward in its first phases. You're going to need something to phone a friend. Hey, I'm in a house and they've got FBDE, QDWI. Can I put them on a DSNP? And you may be thinking, what the heck is any of that? Yeah. But if you're then phoning a friend, the moment you have 4 or 5 of those experiences, now you are consciously competent in that one skill set. And then you get to beat that drum until you get really so good at it that it becomes first nature. And then you're unconsciously competent. It's just second nature, just like what we're doing now in our riffing.
Yep.
If you can't endure the 4 quadrants, which means you're not inquisitive, you're not actually digging deeper, you're not actually refining your skill, and you're not actually becoming so skilled that it's first nature, not second nature, first nature, then you're never going to develop in any area of life. That's all that happens when a child learns to walk, is they see something modeled, they try to imitate the behavior, and eventually they master it. If you can do that and keep doing effort, the skill phase will deliver you from the doldrums of having to beat hard against the machine. And eventually you're waking up to referrals. You're waking up to a $9,000 monthly check coming in from these products. And then you're maybe even able to replicate yourself and create an agency model if that's your goal. But you're not going to do any of that if at the core there's no will.
Absolutely. Adapt, adopt, evolve. I remember those 3 words. When you said those, I was like, all right. And I felt like I was at church because I was like, come on, just come on, keep going. And then it was adverse situations are no longer adverse to you when you put yourself in that situation of, I've done it a million times. I've listened to it. I've watched it. I've done it. I've gone through all of it. And to where you can just spitball. You can have a conversation. Rebuttals and objections, they're not as daunting as they were before. Being told no and having to overcome objection because I got to talk to my daughter, or let me get with my cousin. Those things go to the wayside because you've done the preparation. And the one thing I took away that was just so powerful was there's confidence in preparation. And if you do the work, it's confident. Now, like if you go to your doctor, for example, you get some bad news or, hey, you know what? Don't worry about it, Chase. It's not going to be that big of a deal. I've done this 100 times. There's confidence for your client in someone who is confident because they've done it a million times, and you radiate that. And when you were talking about the adapt and the adopt and evolve, I'm just sitting there thinking, man, the good ones sit there and they're confident. Mary, I'm going to take care of you. Don't worry. We've got you fixed up. Here's my recommendation here. Boom, boom, boom. Mary knows that you're a professional compared to fumbling all over the place. That was a very powerful message for me when it came to the skill development side of it. I absolutely loved it. I highly recommend everybody check that out.
Well, and Chase, a couple of things I know we, from your standpoint, we may need to wrap up, but I have a few kind of euphemisms to put out there. But you said something that I always believe, because obviously my journey's been different than just about anyone else's, but I've always learned that if you can transfer confidence, and it is transmutable, just like enthusiasm is transmutable or transferable. If there's transference, then there'll be transcendence, which means to me, you transcend the objections, you transcend the fear, all the things that make people not want to buy. But I always tell agents as well, I said, no one thing should be a deal breaker or a backbreaker. It should be a will maker. Yes. Any good and or bad thing you experience has to come together to form an impenetrable fortress where you're not afraid of the next opportunity or the next rejection, and keep moving. And I have a fairly nice, nuanced, diplomatic, soothsayers or trying to have a soothing way of speech, but I'm pretty intense in my own way. But if you're authentic, those things will cut through and it'll be transferred, i.e. confidence, and then it'll be transcendent. You'll find yourselves, as I mentioned in that last 8% nation, you'll go from the 6-figure room to the 7-figure room, so on and so forth. But that's iterative, and it requires you to be patient with the process, but to engage the process.
It's a powerful point, just over and over. Like you have to embrace the grind and understand that you're a student, and you're going to continue to be a student in this business, particularly because there's so many moving parts. I took so much away from that, and I'll be sharing that with all of our producers here with FS Nation, and being respectful to your time. I wanted to keep it right to that 30-minute mark, and love to bug you again. I'm just thankful that this AmeriLife family is, the connectivity, the ability to just help each other out is awesome. Scotty and them are so passionate about this, and you're just, you're a beacon of that for all of us here. And I appreciate you, and I'll be bugging you soon to maybe come back on again.
No, Chase, I would love to do it. Me, I've never met a podcast I didn't like. Certainly you and I have continued to exchange energy, and iron sharpens iron. Yes, obviously cliche, but true. So anytime, any place, anywhere, just let me know. I'm game.
You're the man. I appreciate you so much, Brandon.